Hey, who's got my hat?
Look, I'm Woody. Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Give me that.
Right now, at the edge of the galaxy, Emperor Zurg has built a secret billiard weapon with a secret capacity to annihilate an entire planet. I alone have information that reveals his weapon's only weakness, and you, my friend, are responsible for delaying my rendezvous with Always Sunny.
You are a host! You aren't the real Buzz Lightyear. You're a podcast host. You are a man's background noise.
And you are a strange little man, and you have my pity. Farewell.
Farewell, more like hello, because we're
Yes,
starting the
welcome-
episode.
Yes, welcome to a very special episode of It's Always Sunny. This is our 200th episode?
Yep,
Yes.
never thought we'd get here.
Yeah, and because of that, we decided we'll be talking about a series that I'm sure has a special place in all of our hearts. Certainly had a decent impact on our childhood. The Toy Story trilogy. I think we've only talked about plus 4, yeah. I think we've only talked about Pixar like maybe once or twice before.
We did
did
Cars
Turning
and
Red.
Turning Red. That's as
Okay,
far
yeah.
as I remember.
Yeah, I guess this is the first time we're going to be talking about like one of the actual like beloved entries of the
I'm
series.
sorry, are you dissing Lightning McQueen?
A little.
How dare you? And Cars is turning 20 in a few days. And this is the respect you give him?
Cars definitely has its place in Pixar history. Toy Story is like one of the definitive series, though.
Cars is, I think, Pixar's most profitable franchise just because it sold the most toys. Although, like, for a good while, I think most people regarded Cars as the worst Pixar movie. And Cars 2. People regarded Cars and Cars 2 as, like, the worst Pixar movies for a good while. But anyway, before we get into the episode, I just want to give a brief shout out to Marsha Lucas, who recently passed away at the age of 80. She is an American film editor, best known for her work on her husband's films, her husband being George Lucas. So she edited Star Wars, THX 1138, American Graffiti, and Return of the Jedi. She also edited a bunch of Martin Scorsese movies, most prominently Taxi Driver, as well as New York, New York, and Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. So rest in peace, Marsha Lucas, undeniably important editor. Want to just jump right into it, Toy Story?
We got a lot of ground to cover, so may as well.
We're going film by film, right?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Toy Story was released in 1995. It was directed by John Lasseter and had a whole host of writers. Andrew Stanton, who would later go on to direct a bunch of other Pixar movies. Joss Whedon, who obviously would become a significant filmmaker of his own. Joe Cohen, and his writing partner Alec Sokolow, who have less illustrious careers than the other two people I mentioned, because their next big movie was Garfield. Yeah, Pixar. This is Pixar's first movie. So I guess I could just briefly go into the history of Pixar. So Pixar was, they had a short film in 1988 called Tin Toy, which was very successful, and because of this, Pixar was approached by Disney to create a computer animated feature that also was from a small toy's perspective. So Lasseter, Stanton, and Pete Docter wrote the early story treatments. They're all rejected by Disney, who wanted the film's tone to be edgier, because they're like, Disney already had their tone, so I think they wanted they were going to get an outside company to do it. They wanted it to feel, a little different.
You guys ever seen the original, like, drafted storyboard of Woody being a jerk?
I have not.
I haven't, although this isn't I'm talking about. These are rejected treatments. This is before anything even got boarded.
Alright. Never mind.
Yeah, so Disney rejected the early treatments because they wanted to be edgy, and I guess those early drafts they made it a bit too edgy, so they had to go back again. But I don't know. Yeah. So after a couple story reels that were not well received, production was halted, and then they had to rewrite the script to better reflect the tone and theme Pixar desired. Said tone and theme being that toys deeply want children to play with them, and this desire drives their hopes, fears, and actions. What's funny is that John Lasseter actually tried to pitch The Brave Little Toaster, a movie this is often compared to, as a fully computer animated film to Disney, but the idea was rejected and Lasseter was fired.
Fuck, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
Have you guys ever seen The Brave Little Toaster? I know that there's like a whole trilogy on that. I've only ever seen the first one growing up, and the nightmare sequence freaked the fuck out of me as a kid.
I saw it
Yeah, so
once a long time ago, but I don't remember anything about it.
yeah, I saw the first one as a kid, and I haven't really
Though I
seen
think
it.
the reason why I don't remember much is because, like, at the time our TV was like on the verge of dying, so it was really poor screen quality. I couldn't really see much of what was happening in the movie anyway.
I remember seeing it as a kid. I just don't remember anything about it. So anyway, Lasseter then went on to work for Lucasfilms, and obviously founded Pixar. Pixar was then purchased by Apple, and then I guess it got attention from Disney. So a lot of very significant people were responsible for Pixar, because like damn, got the Disney company, George Lucas, and then Steve Jobs. So yeah. So anyway, Disney regretted firing Lasseter, and they wanted to lure him back to the company, but Jobs had faith in him, so Lasseter felt compelled to stay at Pixar. So once Katzenberg realized he couldn't lure Lasseter back to Disney, they met plans to make a production deal with Pixar to produce a movie. So yeah, Disney had always made their movies in house and refused to change this, but Tim Burton, who used to work at Disney, wanted to buy the rights to Nightmare Before Christmas back. Disney struck a deal with him to make it as a Disney film, but outside the studio. And yeah, so that precedent is the same sort of deal that they did with Pixar. So also initially one of the pitches for Pixar's first movie was an adaptation of James and the Giant Peach. Originally, earlier versions of the Toy Story story was going to feature Tinny, the same toy from the Tin Toy short. For a good while, like during production, they just thought this was just going to be a feature-length version of that short, but obviously things changed. Katzenberg was unhappy with the treatments that gave, so it was his idea to make them write a buddy film, so the two main characters had contrasting personalities, and having them, become friends after being forced to work together. So, honestly, that pattern was kind of held for like most Pixar movies, if you think about it, because like damn near every Pixar movie is a buddy film. Finding Nemo's a buddy film. Monsters Inc. is a buddy film.
Ratatouille, in a sense, is also kind of a buddy film.
Credibles is the only one that really isn't, but yeah, that's the only one off the top of my head. Because Wally's also buddy film, so I guess a random studio note from Jeffrey Katzenberg became like the studio's new mantra. Inside Out, that's another one. Coco. Yeah, so originally, Buzz Lightyear was meant to be a G.I. Joe, and then eventually they changed it to Lunar Larry, and then eventually Buzz Lightyear after, Buzz Aldrin. Woody was inspired by Casper the Friendly Ghost doll that Lasseter had when he was a kid, which had the pull string. It was a ventriloquist dummy with a pull string, which is why he was called Woody. And then Bud Lucky decided that Woody should be changed to a cowboy instead of a ventriloquist dummy. And Lasseter was like, "Oh yeah, Western sci-fi, that'd be a fun contrast." And the story drew inspiration from films such as Midnight Run and The Odd Couple. Honestly, that makes a lot of sense. Also, Lasseter screened them Castle in the Sky, the Miyazaki movie, for further influence. I have not seen Castle in the Sky, so I have zero idea how that impacted it. And well, that's enough for production. I'll just get into the casting. Paul Newman was the initial person considered for the role of Woody. Obviously, they didn't go with that. Instead, gave him the illustrious role of Doc Hudson in Pixar's Cars. They also considered Robin Williams and Clint Eastwood. But Lasseter always wanted Tom Hanks to play the role. He said that Hanks has the ability to take emotions and make them appealing, even in a character that is not very likable, which I guess is the idea. Because rewatching this movie, Woody's kind of a dick.
Woody's
And
kind
I
of
was
a
like,
dick
oh
for
yeah,
most of this saga. Like, it's not just this film.
yeah, but also it's Woody, so everyone selects him. But yeah, probably entirely because of Tom Hanks' performance. So I guess a good call on Lasseter's part. And yeah, Billy Crystal was initially approached to play Buzz. However, he turned down the role, believing the film would be unsuccessful due to his animation. Crystal immediately regretted this after seeing the movie, and then so when he was offered Monsters Inc., he immediately said yes. And yeah, a bunch of other comedians were offered, including Bill Murray, Chevy Chase, Jim Carrey, Jason Alexander, Dan Aykroyd, Matthew Broderick, Kevin Costner, Michael J. Fox, Richard Gere, David Hasselhoff, Michael Keaton, Wayne Knight, Bill Paxton, Dennis Quaid, Kurt Russell, Adam Sandler, and John Travolta were also all considered for Buzz. Lasseter then took the role to Tim Allen, who appeared in Disney's Home Improvement, and he accepted. Before Wallace Shawn and Jim Varney were cast as Rex and Slinky, Rick Moranis and John Cleese were originally considered for the role. Interesting casting process, I guess, for
I didn't realize Buzz went through so many different potential voice actors before Tim Allen. That's wild.
So, Toy Story, it obviously features a world with sentient toys who pretend to be lifeless around humans. and they're preparing to move to a new house with their young owner Andy, and during a birthday party, a sort of a going away birthday party, well, everyone becomes concerned that a new toy will replace him before being calmed down by Woody, who is sort of the leader of the group. Everyone's concerns turn out to be true though, as Andy receives a Buzz Lightyear action figure, who sort of promptly replaces Woody's role in the hierarchy. Buzz Lightyear himself also seems to genuinely think he's a space ranger and does not know he's a toy. So 2 days before the move, Andy's family is planning to have dinner at a restaurant called Pizza Planet, and to ensure Andy brings him and not Buzz, Woody tries to knock Buzz behind a desk, but accidentally knocks him out the window. This causes all the toys to turn on Woody as they think Woody has did attempted murder. So Andy takes Woody with him, and then Buzz, gets in the car and follows him. And then when they stop at the gas station, Buzz confronts Woody. They fight and they fall out the car and are left behind. So they hitch a ride on the Pizza Planet truck, and they try to catch up with Andy at Pizza Planet, but Buzz mistakes a claw machine for a rocket, and they end up getting taken by Sid, Andy's neighbor, who's also psychotic. Well, not psychotic, but from the perspective of a toy, he's a psychopath. From the perspective of us, he's just a kid that likes to get in trouble. At Sid's house, they try to avoid, getting taken apart. They meet Sid's toys who are taken apart, and Buzz sees a commercial for Buzz Lightyear toys, which gives him an existential crisis when he realizes that he actually is a toy. And yeah, the rest of the movie is sort of their plan to escape from Sid's house, and then as Buzz and Woody become friends, and then after they escape, they have to catch up with a moving truck. So that's the movie. So what are your guys' thoughts after having seen it in I don't know, when was the last time you guys saw this movie?
That's actually a good question. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think around the time the fourth movie came out.
Honestly, probably even longer for me. Like maybe 2015, 16, somewhere around there.
Where do you start with a movie like Toy Story?
Given that this was 1995, the animation definitely has aged. But honestly, when it comes to the toys specifically, I think they still did a pretty good job with them.
I think the character animation is really good. Like, I don't know,
the human models look off though, but that's just a given.
The human models look off. But when it came to the toys animation, honestly, in terms of like actual like character animation, this has some of my favorite stuff out of all the films. Just because like there's a bunch of like very odd and very unique expressions that they do. When I think it becomes a bit more standardized as it goes along. Like I feel like in this first movie, they actually kind of feel like toys. Is like a little bit off with like to me, like the fact it's a little stiff and like the eyes sort of blink one at a time. Like that's like a bonus. That feels more accurate.
I've always been really impressed by this film's sense of scale. Like the Green Army Men scene, I think, is a great example. I always loved that sequence. It really feels larger than life.
I did not remember Mr. Potato Head being such an antagonist. He's a fucking asshole. It's like, what the hell? Like, Woody's a prick, too. Like, Mr. Potato Head just does not let him breathe.
I mean, Woody kind of does deserve some of the shit thrown at him. Let's not kid ourselves.
Does deserve it. He deserves it, but you get a feeling that there's, like, some prior animosity,
Maybe jealousy, because he took the #1 spot for so long.
Yeah, maybe Potato Head was the favorite originally, and then Woody came in.
But yeah, overall, this movie was also really funny. This movie has, like, a lot of good jokes.
I think the voice acting it definitely helps a lot with that. Like the delivery is like on point. I think like everybody points to the "you are a toy" scene as an example, and like
there's a lot of iconic moments in this film in particular for sure. Like even if you grew up like during the 2010s internet culture, like you're bound to recognize some of the scenes or just simple screenshots that come from this film, or even some sound bites like Woody's laugh when he tells Buzz like, "Look, a space alien, where?" And then he just does that laugh. Like everybody's used that laugh before.
Yeah, honestly, like as a kids film, I think it's pretty much perfect. Like the only like real issues I had with it, it was a few of the time the Randy Newman score came in, it took me a little bit out of it. I was like, what the hell is this? I remember during like the sad like Bugs montage, like the music was a little distracting.
I agree there. I mean, You Got a Friend in Me is like pretty iconic, and it is a standard for like this whole series, and it's what you think of when you think of Toy Story. But a lot of the other songs, I guess it's to like define a style for this film in particular. But yeah, it felt a little odd.
Yeah, I think this was like Disney's first non-musical in a while, so maybe they were
Maybe it could be a
afraid of having.
compromise. Like maybe it could be a compromise. Like Pixar didn't want to make a musical, and Disney's like, all right, can you have original songs at least somehow?
It reminds me of like how Tarzan did the music. The Odd Couple dynamic is really funny because like it almost feels like an exaggerated version of the Odd Couple dynamics. Is like it's so different with like sheriff and spaceman, but also just like the one is completely delusional. It's interesting how the next two movies sort of iterate on it because the second movie like Buzz has to save Woody instead of Woody having to save Buzz, and like Buzz is the one that has to convince him to come back. And then the third one, it's sort of like it's sort of just like a combination of the first two again with like what are you driving at with the but everyone gets captured this time, and also the prison is way more high stakes than Sid's dungeon, so yeah, it's interesting. Although it's interesting how in this movie there really is no like true antagonist. Like Sid is more of an obstacle than anything.
It's not like Sid is like actively impeding on Woody and Buzz at any point. He's definitely
Yeah, and
like
all the
he's
other toys
definitely a
are.
danger, but he's not actively in the way.
Yeah, it's more like a volcano than like a villain. All of Sid toys are good people. Speaking of which, those are some great, interesting designs from those from Sid's toys. Yeah, no, I guess it's a little counterintuitive to the plot. I'm gonna say like I do think the theme of this story is a little conservative because like I don't see what's wrong with how Sid plays with his toys. It's like, oh no, you must follow the. I feel like Sid is the type of kid who's like he's gonna invent whatever he wants out of the Lego box when Andy's the one that's gonna follow the instructions. And like either is fine, but I don't see what's so wrong with the way Sid plays. Like I don't know.
I guess that just
Like
poses the
oh
question of
no,
whether or not it's okay if the toys are in fact sentient.
if they were alive, if he knew he was alive and still did it, sure, that's like a different thing. But like
Well, eventually he
taking apart,
knows.
Eventually
yeah,
he does,
taking
and it
apart,
probably fucks him up for life.
yeah, but like taking apart your toys and recombining that's a perfectly valid way to play with toys. If anything, like Sid is a very creative kid. Those are some cool designs he did. Like I don't know, I feel like Sid got too much shit in this movie. And it also feels ironic because the next movie it almost like sort of rejects the idea of collectors and is like oh no like kids should play and it was like okay well why what's oh overall great movie recommend if you still have kids if you're still an adult it's still funny yeah so no complaints here.
I do have
Yeah.
one question.
Yeah. What?
Yeah.
So, much like Cars, I feel like the more you think about the rules of Toy Story, the more it kind of falls apart. So, first off, Woody already mentions like we're gonna have to break a few rules, like when they're about to scare Sid. They never establish what those are. I'm just going to chalk that up to being like you need to be like static. You just need to be like a toy. You should not interact with them. Like that I can get behind. What
It's like the B move rules. I'm pretty sure don't talk to humans, don't that type of deal.
What I don't get though is when Buzz is first introduced, he thinks like he's like a legitimate space ranger
Yeah, yeah.
Is
on
the
his own
question why
mission.
does Buzz stay still when he isn't when he knows he's not when he doesn't think he's a toy?
Not just that, why doesn't anyone else remember their lore? And this is
um
especially
and
concerning for 2 because Woody learns about who he was, but apparently he never even knew that information right out the box.
I don't think it really
I don't
matters,
know.
but like
I don't.
yeah, it's a plot hole, but it's not like a important plot hole. So, I
Okay.
guess with the first one with Buzz, you could just assume that Buzz is just copying what the locals are doing because like that's a standard like survival tactic. But for the second one, yeah, fair point. But let's get into the second movie now that we're at it. Okay, Toy Story 2 was released in 1999. So obviously the second installment of the Pixar franchise, also directed by John Lasseter, with a screenplay from Andrew Stanton. The conversation about a sequel to Toy Story began pretty much a month after the film's opening. A few days after Toy Story release, John Lasseter was traveling with his family, and he saw a kid already clutching a Sheriff Woody doll at an airport. John Lasseter described how the boy's excitement to show it to his father touched him deeply. That was a defining factor in the production of Toy Story 2. He saw how much people liked the movie, and he was like, "Okay, I want to give you another one." Yeah. Then later, all of these, the Pixar heads, they visited Joe Roth, who was the successor to Jeffrey Katzenberg, who got kicked out during the production of A Bug's Life. Roth, embraced the idea of a sequel, although initially the plan was for it to be similar to Return of Jafar, which was going to be a direct-to-video sequel. In fact, everything would be regarding Toy Story 2's production was very uncertain. They had no idea if the stars were going to be available and affordable. They had no idea what the story premise was going to be. Either if it was going to be computer animated or if it was going to be hand drawn, given it was direct to video.
Not only that, but you could correct me if I'm wrong. This film almost didn't happen because
I'll
I
get into
think.
that part. I
Okay,
got into that part later, but yeah.
okay, okay.
Laster initially also regarded this project as a chance to groom new talent. Andrew Stanton have already the writer of the first movie has already, sort of rose up and directed A Bug's Life, and Pete Docter, who was the other Pixar co-founder, was going to direct Monsters Inc. Initially, they selected Ash Brannon to direct the film. He ended up becoming the co-director of Toy Story 2, and later would leave Pixar to direct Sony's Surf's Up, and later he would write Netflix's series Arcane. So good career for him. And yeah, eventually Pixar officially announced a sequel in a press release on March 1997. So here's a direct quote from John Lasseter on the story of Toy Story 2. The story of Toy Story 2 is based a lot on my own experience. I'm a big toy collector, and a lot of them are antiques and one of a kind toys, or prototypes that toy makers have given me. Well, I have 5 sons, 4 of them are little, and they love to come to Daddy's work, and they come to Daddy's office and just play with everything. And I'm sitting there saying, "Oh, you can't play with that one, no, no." And then I found myself sitting there looking at myself laughing because toys are meant to be played by kids. And that's the core essence of Toy Story. What is it like from a toy's point of view to be collected? So yeah, I guess Al is self-criticism of John Lasseter. He's like, honestly, it's kind of stupid that I collect toys and don't let my kids play with them. And I was like, I should. So yeah, that's kind of funny. So John Lasseter's initial intention, the story was originally wondering what a toy would be, how a toy would feel if they were not played by a child, or worse, a child grew out of a toy. So obviously that would be blossom more in Toy Story 3, but some of that is still, you can still see that here. Brennan suggested the yard sale, where Woody would be recognized as a rare artifact. Initially, Woody as a collectible actually was from an earlier draft from A Tin Toy Christmas, which is a half-hour special Pixar pitched Disney, but they later changed that, obviously, or ditched that idea. And yeah, Lasseter claims that Al is inspired by himself. The secondary characters in Woody's sets were inspired by the 1940s Western and puppet show for children, such as Howdy Doody and Four Feather Falls and Hopsall and Cassidy. Yeah, the parody show with Woody was a common thing back in the day. Jessie was kindled by Lasseter's development of Jessie was kindled by Lasseter's wife Nancy, who wanted more strong female characters. Given that Bo Peep was pretty much the only one in the first film. The scope for the original Toy Story, only extended between 2 residential homes and a chain restaurant. Where Toy Story 2, they wanted to be much more feel much more like a journey with them having to travel a great distance and whatnot. So as I believe Lugia was trying to mention earlier, at a certain point during production, they pretty much lost all their work, and Galen Sussman, who had been working remotely to care for a newborn child, revealed that she had a backup copy on her films on her home computer. So yeah, they were able to recover nearly all the lost assets, save for a few recent days of work, allowing the film to proceed. Although many of the creative staff at Pixar were unhappy with how the sequel progressed, and eventually they decided that they were just going to rework a good chunk of the film. Also, around this point, it was also when they decided it wasn't going to be direct to video and it was going to be actual release in theaters. And yeah, Toy Story 2 had a very, very troubled production. Even beyond the technical failures and the fact they were kind of unsure about whether it was going to be direct to video or not. So but ultimately got done, got released, and became the third highest grossing film of 1999, right after The Sixth Sense and Star Wars. It was about 50 million. I noticed I didn't mention how much the first Toy Story grossed. Let me just get into that. The first Toy Story, on a $30 million budget, grossed $400 million. Pretty hefty profit, and it was the second highest grossing film of 1995, the first being Die Hard 3, which we actually have talked about on the show before, so that's kind of funny.
I guess that's good considering like all the trouble they went through with just making this film. And if it didn't
Yeah,
make
they
back
made
its budget, Toy Story probably would have just died.
yeah, or Pixar the company could have died too, honestly. But yeah, $90 million, so slightly bigger budget, but the profit was also slightly bigger. So yeah, released to widespread critical acclaim. Toy Story 2 is one of the very few movies to have a perfect score on Rotten Tomatoes. So yeah, anyway, let's get into the plot. So So Woody and Buzz Lightyear become co-leaders of Andy's toys. Having become friends due to the events of the first movie. Andy is going to go to summer camp and plans to take Woody, but accidentally rips his arm. So Andy's mother places Woody on a shelf, and Woody begins to become very paranoid that Andy will throw him away. The following day, Woody finds Wheezy, a penguin toy with broken squeaker, who has been shelved. Wheezy is a fun character. He basically is portrayed as having emphysema. So anyway, while Andy is away, his mom decides to do a yard sale, which is kind of insane to do. She just starts taking shit from Andy's room and is like, yeah, we'll start selling this. What the fuck? Like, imagine you went to summer camp, then you come home and find out your mom just started selling shit. I
Could
don't
have
know.
told Andy to set a box aside before he left for camp, Mom, but whatever.
So yeah, anyway, Wheezy gets taken, which I mean, admittedly he has a broken toy, so they probably would have sold him, but yeah, Woody decides to go to the yard sale and try to save him. While there, toy collector Al McWiggin, the owner of Al's Toy Barn, sets out to purchase Woody after seeing how he is rare. However, Andy's mom is like, no, the fact Woody's here is a mistake. We're not selling him. So Al just steals him. Oh, also, the movie opens with a cold opening where they have I guess Andy has a TV in his room now, and so while they're away, they play video games. At Al's apartment, Woody discovers that he is designed after the protagonist of Woody's Roundup, a popular 1950s Western series, and he meets his co-star Jesse the Cow, Bullseye the Horn, and Sneaky Pete the Prospector. Sneaky Pete comedically refuses to get out of his box for some reason. While delighted to meet them, Woody realizes that Al plans to sell the entire collection to a toy museum in Tokyo. So Woody, says he intends to return home to Andy, which concerns them, the rest of the gang, because they need the complete collection to be sold. After Woody's arm is repaired the next day, Woody learns that Jessie was once loved by her owner Emily until she outgrew and abandoned her, which that plays off Woody's existing anxieties. And since he's worried Andy might do the same, Woody decides to go to the museum. Meanwhile, Buzz has launched an effort to save them. Fortunately, he encounters a utility belt Buzz Lightyear toy, a brand new and improved Buzz Lightyear thing, and for some reason, Buzz Lightyears are just like pre-programmed to think that they are actual space rangers. So in a sort of honestly, this is kind of a formula with like all with the whole trilogy. If you notice it, where like at some point they're going to encounter a Buzz Lightyear that thinks he's a Buzz Lightyear because he gets sort of reprogrammed in the third movie too, except he's Spanish. Yeah, they have some funny gags with your utility belt Buzz, where the gang does not realize that he has been replaced up until the actual Buzz shows up again, and it becomes really obvious. Also, Emperor Zurg follows them, and they do a sort of Star Wars parody. Eventually, the toys, after coming with their traffic cone plans and going to the store, and then eventually they manage to get to Andy Al's no Al's apartment. So yeah, so they try to get him back, but Woody refuses to go with them. After the toys leave, Woody actually reconsiders and decides that rather than leave, he'll invite Woody's Roundup toys to join him and become Andy's toys. It is then revealed that Pete is evil. So sort of I guess the first Pixar twist villain. Ultimately kind of gets repeated in Toy Story 3 because Lotso has a similar thing where he's like, oh, actually no, Lotso is a little bit different because Pete's villain
Lotso
origin is
has
the
more
fact
of a
that he never.
motivation for why he's evil. Pete, not so much.
No, Pete has a perfectly valid motivation. It's just that Pete never got played. So to him, he's already completely jaded about that fact. So he's just like, this is all I've ever been, a collector's item. So that's where it is. But with Lotso, honestly, he's a little bit stupid because he's just like, oh, I got abandoned, and because of that, I'm gonna be like his motivation makes kind of sense, but it's also a little bit. I feel like it makes a little less sense at the same time. I don't know.
We'll get
Emotionally, emotionally it makes more sense, but I think like logistically it makes a little less sense because like I don't know. Like there's no reason for him to be a dictator at the same time. Like I don't know. Al takes all the toys to the airport, and Andy's Buzz and the other toys pursue Al to the airport in the Pizza Planet truck, while being accompanied by three toy aliens, who proceed to worship Mr. Potato Head. And yeah, there's this big epic sort of action scene in the airport baggage sorting system, which to this day I think that's one of the best action scenes in a Pixar movie. That was really fun. And yeah, during which Pete reopens the tear in Woody's arm. And once this action climax is resolved, they return to Andy's home. How do they return to Andy's home, actually?
They take the wagon back, or whatever you
Yeah,
call
they
it.
take one of the vehicles. They take the vehicle that carries the luggage to the plane. They drive that home because there's that shot. There's that little gag of neighbors across the street being like, "Where the hell did this come from?"
And yeah, go happily ever after. Andy returns from cowboy camp and immediately likes the new toys. I guess he never asked his mom about them. I mean, I know he says thanks, mom, but I guess no further discussion. He just has two extra toys, and no one
I mean, hey, if you were
questions
a
it.
kid and you got an extra toy, wouldn't you just be like, "Hey, cool, new toy," not
Well,
questioning
obviously,
why
yeah.
or
I'm
where
not.
or
I'm not
why?
questioning. I'm not questioning Andy. I'm just more questioning that Andy's parents just never saw him and they never wondered. They're like, I feel like if I had a brand new toy, my parents would wonder where the hell that came from. But all right. So, what did you guys think?
I think this might be my favorite of the films.
I agree.
I
I think this
agree.
is also like one of my top 3 favorite Pixar films.
Yeah,
Like
I would say this is.
it does what a sequel should do. Like it builds upon what was done before while also throwing in some new compelling things. Like I like the idea of Woody questioning like, do I go into do I go to this museum and be loved by kids forever? Or do I stay with Andy and know I only have a limited amount of time to
Yeah, I
be
love how
loved
this plants
directly?
the seed of a toy's shelf life or longevity, and then they do follow through with that in Toy Story 3. Toy Story 1 is a very simple story by comparison. It's great. I still love that film, but I like how this one gets a little more philosophical about a
I
toy's
still think Toy
lifespan.
Story. I still think Toy Story One is the funniest and has the best character
I
animation.
would
But I
agree
really
on
just
that end,
like.
yeah.
I really like the visual variety, creativity here, and again, I think like it's one of the more thematically interesting ones. Especially because like it doesn't like retread like anything.
Well, a few
So yeah, I don't
gags,
know.
A few gags,
especially
yeah,
with
like
the utility belt Buzz Lightyear. They like repeat a lot of the gags that Buzz went through in the first one.
only this time it's
Yeah,
Buzz on
but
the receiving end, and he's like,
I feel like the
was I really
context
this
changed.
annoying?"
I feel like the context like changed it a bit. Where like it's more like repeating the same like setup, but it's like a different punchline.
Yeah, like and again, going back to what you said when we talked about the first Toy Story, they kind of flipped the script where it's Buzz trying to convince Woody of his purpose as a toy instead of the other way around. To recontextualize the "you are a toy" thing to mean something else.
Also, I feel like this became pretty defining film in Pixar sort of thing. A lot of people mention like the sad Pixar ending, and this doesn't have a sad ending; it has a sad midpoint. But like this is definitely, I think, one of the first few times where Pixar tried to get a bit tear jerkery.
I
But
think
I think
that's
like it's
also
pretty effective
I think
here.
it's also the only Randy Newman song in the film. So I know you guys said you weren't really crazy about them from the first film, so there's less.
Human animation definitely took a little bit of a upgrade. I wouldn't say like it's
It still
like I
doesn't
actually don't
hold
have any
up,
complaints.
but it's an improvement.
But I think Al looks fine.
I think it holds up. It's just like it doesn't have like the fidelity of like the modern stuff. But I think it holds up fine.
I think it's also
If anything.
interesting this is the only Toy Story movie with a human villain and a toy villain.
No, it's debatable if
Yeah.
Sid really is a villain, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's the only one that has, I guess, both. It's true. Yeah. I'd say like the most interesting part about this movie to me was okay. I guess here's the thing. It's like I feel like this is the only Toy Story sequel that I think actually like justifies itself. And this isn't to say I don't like the other two, but I feel like the other two, all of the Toy Story movies, and I'd say all the Pixar movies in general, they're generally about like anxieties over aging. Like that's generally what the metaphor is. It's just I think like the Toy Story movies, like the first one, it's more of like the anxiety of being replaced. The second one though is more of like I feel like it gets much more into like a parent metaphor, where it's like anxiety about like your kid no longer needing you, and alternative paths. Like it almost feels like him being a collector's item is almost like a retirement home of sorts. But that's the weird thing with like Toy Story 3 and 4 is that like it kind of feels like it keeps going back to the exact same sort of anxiety as this one, and I don't know. I feel like each ending gets a little less satisfying because with here it's like.
I think each sequel is a different point of that anxiety. Second movie is worried about what's going to happen when it happens. Third movie is encountering it when it does happen, and fourth
Fourth.
movie is trying to deal with the aftermath of it happening.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like, and I'm sort of jumping ahead, but like I don't find the other two all that like. Okay, here's a sort of weird thing. Is like I don't like how 3 and 4 are sort of like start deifying Andy a bit. But like I don't know. It's this weird thing with like the sequels where I think like I don't think that this one falls in the pitfalls of, but it's like I get like the point of like 3 is very much like a your kid's going off to college. Like it's very much like a metaphor of like, oh, that sort of thing. But it's like I don't know. How do I put this? I'm surprised I haven't like tried to do like a prequel sort of like sequel thing, but like so much of Toy Story 3 is like, oh, we have to stay there for Andy, even though like Andy hasn't played with them in years, and they at this point like Woody would already sort of be is basically just a collector's item, and it was like I think it'd be interesting if like and I guess they sort of do this with 4 because as someone sort of you deal with like Woody there where he's like no longer really played as much, but like the gap between Toy Story 2 and 3 where like Andy grew out of the toys, but this was before his leave. Like it feels like I guess that's sort of interesting because with Toy Story 3, Toy Story 3 is more of like, they're kind of coping because, like, oh, Andy doesn't really want to play with us, but, maybe, he'll give it to his kids or whatever. We still need to, have faith and whatnot. Weird thing to me is, like, I feel like Woody is much more at peace with the idea that, like, eventually Andy's going to grow up out of it in Toy Story 2. When Toy Story 3 and 4, I feel like he becomes much more, like, neurotic and Andy becomes a lot more deified. It felt like, I don't know, a little bit strange for me after, like, rewatching 2 and then seeing 3 right after because it's like, Woody seems perfectly at peace with the fact that eventually he's going to grow out. And honestly, I feel like there's somewhat of an implication that him being such an old toy that maybe he was like Andy's dad's thing. So like it's not like he hasn't been through this before. And again with like Jesse, you see that eventually you're gonna be your kid's gonna move on. It's like I don't know. It just felt a little bit redundant, and I felt like the characterization felt a little bit I don't know. With 3 and 4, I don't think 3 and 4 are bad movies, but like I don't think that the change in circumstance really adds enough to where I don't feel that the it could have just ended with 2 and I would have been fine with it. But yeah, I don't know.
For a while, 2 was the only sequel for like 11 years.
Yeah, I feel like a decade.
Like
Um
we grew up basically with only 2 films.
yeah, 3 was the we saw 3 in theaters,
Yeah.
all of us. Yeah, but even like even when 3 first came out, I was like I liked it, but it wasn't like I didn't understand why everyone thought it was the best one. But yeah.
Is that a segue to 3? Do we have more to say about 2?
Yeah, do we have more to say about 2? I like how much they got to flesh out the other characters. I feel like 2 was like my favorite growing up as a kid just because like quite frankly the first movie is just about Woody and Buzz when I feel like this one like we actually finally get like the ensemble. Mr. Potato Head sort of became one of my favorite characters because of 2. If it was just one, I'd be like who is this prick? And yeah, like I feel like this definitely made the side characters fun. I feel like this definitely has like I think the strongest like ensemble.
I also think this movie has some of the best set pieces. Like I love the traffic scene where they're crossing the street with the cones. Like that always
Yeah,
gets
the
a great
traffic
laugh out of
scene,
me.
the
The
climax
the
with
toy
The fight
barn.
with Zurg, when they're in the toy store driving around. We mentioned the airport scene.
yeah, the elevator stuff also I really liked. That was pretty
Yeah.
good. All right, let's go into Toy Story 3. So Toy Story 3 was not directed by John Lasseter. This one was directed by Lee Unrich, who was also a co-director of Toy Story 2. So he served similar roles for Monsters Inc. and Finding Nemo. So Toy Story 3 was his first sort of solo directorial debut. He would later go on to direct Coco. So good job, Lee. And it was written by Michael Arndt, who has a fascinating fucking career. So he got his start writing Little Miss Sunshine, which was this huge indie darling of the 2000s. He then got and apparently this put him on the radar of a bunch of people as he was basically handpicked to write the sequel for Toy Story 3, and George Lucas handpicked him to write Star Wars Episode 7. Unfortunately, the actual final product, Episode 7, is not what Michael Arndt wrote. Michael Arndt's Episode 7 was based off George Lucas's story treatment. And then what actually happened is that got thrown out, and then J.J. Abrams and Lawrence Kasdan rewrote it. Michael Arndt is still credited just due to union rules, but yeah, that's not his movie technically. But yeah, I think it was still involved a little, but yeah. Yeah, also Oscar winner because Loma Sunshine won the Oscar for Best Screenplay. Toy Story 3 was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, so even though I'm going to criticize the script in comparison to 2, it's still well written. This movie had a significantly higher budget than the last one. Last one was 90 million. This is 200 million. Although its profits were also significantly higher, making $1 billion. At the time, it was one of the most expensive films ever made, but also one of the highest-grossing films of all time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Uh,
wasn't this also the first animated film to cross $1 billion?
I believe it was. At the time of release, it was the fourth highest grossing film of all time. And it was the highest grossing film of 2010. it outgrossed Harry Potter and Shrek 4. I had no idea Shrek 4 came out that year. That's crazy. It honestly remained Pixar's highest grossing film up until Incredibles 2. So yeah, this was a monster hit. Yeah, so anyway, to get into the production. According to the terms of Pixar's initial 7-film deal with the Walt Disney Company, all characters created by Pixar were owned and controlled by Disney, and they owned the rights to make sequels to all Pixar films up to and including Cars. So, although Pixar retained the right to refuse to work on these sequels, so naturally they refused to work on all the Cars spin-offs. But when Toy Story 3 was put in motion, so in 2004, there were contentious negotiations between the two companies, which made a split appear likely. But Michael Eisner then put plans in motion to produce Toy Story 3 at the new Disney studio Circle 7 Animation. And yeah, it was initially going to be released in spring 2008. Bradley Raymond, who previously directed Lion King 1.5 and Hunchback of Notre Dame 2, was hired to direct the film. And among the scripts, Teacher's Pet, that TV show that Disney had made.
Yeah.
So the guys who wrote that, they wrote a whatchamacallit, the guys who wrote the Teacher's Pet movie, they also whatchamacallit, had a pitch, and that film involved Andy's toys paying a visit to his grandmother's house for the night because of his room getting remodeled. So instead of Andy's toys and new characters, try to figure out who was stealing the toys one by one and who done that style mystery. Apparently, while they rejected it, Disney actually liked it, and this little seed eventually became the inspiration for a possible fourth installment. And if as we've seen Toy Story 4, them being in a sort of antique, old person's thing, is kind of what they went with. So eventually though, Disney bought Pixar in 2006. During this buyout, John Lasseter got put in charge of all of Disney Animation, and because of this, Circle 7's version of Toy Story 3 was shut down. Although Pixar's Brain Trust had their own ideas for a sequel that they've been carrying around for the years. They came up with a story, they brought it to Andrew Stanton, who then proceeds to develop it. Random fun facts I want to throw in. The film's art director is Daisuke Tsutsumi, who is married to Hayao Miyazaki's niece, which is crazy. And what's also funny is that this said niece was the inspiration of May from My Neighbor Totoro. Ain't that crazy?
Is that why Totoro's in the movie?
Possibly. Another fun fact is for this film, Pixar was trying to create the toy equivalent of Dante's Inferno.
Every circle of hell is just another room in Sunnyside Daycare.
Yeah,
Oh, and I can buy it.
Yeah, they said the goal is not to accurately depict a weight management facility. Um, they just wanted to look like hell. So yeah, when the toys were about to die, that is, they are going to hell. That was the intent. They want the children to think that these toys are going to hell. It's crazy. Let's get into the plot. So Andy is leaving for college. He has not played with his toys in years. When his parents are sort of cleaning out the attic, he sees Woody and decides, "Fuck it, I'm gonna take Woody with me, just as a memento." The rest of the toys are stored in the attic. Andy mistakenly takes the bag on the curb, takes the bag, and puts it on the curb for garbage pickup. So the toys escape, believing Andy intends to throw them away, and joins Barbie in a donation box bound for a daycare. Woody pursues the others and fails to convince them of the truth. So they go to Sunnyside Daycare, and it seems like a paradise where they're all going to be played. Ultimately, though, Woody's like, "I have to leave." Although in his attempt to leave, Bonnie, one of the kids who attends Sunnyside, takes them to her house. Anyway, Andy's toys find out that daycare is not what it seems, and the toddlers beat the fuck out of him. It's revealed that the kindly Lotso, who runs the daycare, for some reason runs a police state, which is unnecessary. I don't know. It feels just a bit nuts. I don't know.
Big monkey is watching you.
So yeah, anyway, Buzz basically becomes the leader of the group. But seeing promise in Buzz, Lotso has him switch to demo mode, and he basically goes back to default Buzz again. So anyway, Bonnie's house, Woody meets a bunch of new toys. But after learning that Lotso is a dictator, Woody ventures back to save them. So they initiate an escape plan, and they end up beating the reset Buzz by turning him Spanish. And yeah, the rest of the movie is them just trying to escape from the Sunnyside thing. Eventually, him and Lotso, Lotso and the gang thwart them, but and they got dragged into a garbage truck. we learn Lotso's sort of backstory with how he got abandoned and well, not abandoned but from his perspective he got abandoned, but what happened is the kid lost their toy and was probably crying her eyes out, and because of that the parents were like, okay, we'll buy a new one, fuck, but whatever. So they're brought to a local trash center and they're dumped into incinerator. The toys accept that they are going to hell, and they prepare to die for each other. And a very popular prank arose where many people would edit the movie to where the credits would roll right as the toys accept death.
God.
I've seen that prank before.
Yeah, but anyway, that's not how the movie actually ends. No, they get saved by the aliens, which I guess
By
is
the power of the claw.
it's weird how that's a running gag in all the movies. Now to think about it, those aliens, but those are basically Pixar's version of the Minions, but they never really caught on like the Minions, or they feel less tacky. But
They're not in 4, right?
uh,
I don't think they're in 4.
Uh,
they're not.
they are, but I don't think they have any speaking lines.
Yeah, they're there, but like they're just like background. And discovers a note from Woody and assumes it's his mother and decides to donate the toys to Bonnie, who lives nearby. Also, really funny beat is that when Bonnie recognizes Woody and he's initially hesitant to give it to her, but then he's like, "Wait a second, I'm a grown ass man. I need to," and then he does. Well, that's kind of funny. But yeah, I have a few criticisms of this movie, but I do still think it's good. What do you guys think?
So, I've seen Toy Story 1 and 2 countless times as both a kid and a teenager. Toy Story 3, I have only seen once prior, and it was when we watched it in theaters together. This was my second time seeing this film. So, I don't really have like the nostalgia that I do for 1 and 2 for this one, but I still enjoyed it altogether. Yeah, there's still some problems here. I think one of my biggest peeves is Lotso as a character, and I think some of the gags just aren't nearly as funny as they are in 1 and 2. But overall, I think as the end of a trilogy, it works. Especially the ending. I think the ending is what really sticks with me the most, when Andy gives away his toys to Bonnie.
So let's see. What's my experience with this movie? So I saw it in theaters. I might have seen it with Patty. I'm not sure.
No, we didn't see this together in theaters.
I do believe I've seen it a few other times since, although most of those were still in middle school. I don't know if you guys remember standardized testing, but every year after standardized testing, we would have like 4 hours where we just sat alone in class. So the teacher would always put on a movie or two, and
And
one year the
if it
teacher put on
wasn't
Toy
Cat in the
Story.
Hat, it was okay.
Yeah, okay. One year, I think one year me and Louie were in the same one where they just play Cat in the Hat every fucking day,
No, I
like two
wasn't. I wasn't
times.
there for that one. But you shared that story before.
Never mind. But yeah, one well that was like eighth grade or something. But the other one year they played Toy Story 3 again. Although the version they had was like a Russian bootleg, so that was a very interesting
What?
experience. Yeah, I saw a Russian like bootleg version of Toy Story 3. It
Was it
was
like
just
was it really shitty video quality and audio quality?
yeah, and it wasn't like in English. It had subtitles. I don't know, it was weird.
I don't know why that cracks me up.
Wonder how they
I
handled
mean,
Spanish buzz.
I don't recall actually. It might have still been Spanish, but yeah.
But what if it was the
Um,
same voice actor?
I don't know. I don't remember. The audio was too shitty for me to even tell.
You know what? One of these days we're just gonna watch that Russian bootleg and talk about it.
But
What
anyway,
was your experience with Russian bootleg Toy Story 3? I don't know.
but anyway,
Whatever. Move past it.
again, I have a lot of thoughts about the movie actually. So before I guess I'll just give a brief summary. So my overall thoughts is like, I think it's a perfectly fine movie, but I think the way it tries to be sort of sappy at the end, it feels a bit too like metatextual, and it feels a little cheap to me in ways I don't think the previous movies were. I don't have issues with Lotso as a villain. I think the prospector is pretty good, but I feel like he's able to differentiate himself enough. The fact that he's kind of like a mirror version of Woody, I think is a good foil work, and I do like that they get the twist on like halfway through, so he's able to sort of be a villain for the whole movie. Although I just think that he's almost like a little too comically evil. So there's like I guess two types of twist villains. Where like and what I liked about the Prospector too is that ultimately his personality doesn't really change. It's just that like with two, him being a villain almost to me feels more as like a move of desperation rather than a move of malice. When Lotso is just fucking evil. So yeah, I don't know. I have mixed feelings on 3 in terms of its emotional stakes and the villainy thing. Sorry, burp. Even again with like the emotional beats in 2, that's again through halfway through the movie, so that more informs Jesse's character rather than leaving this ending on like this sort of sappy, you're saying goodbye to these characters you love, and it's like that's a little like a weird of a meta thing. I feel like Andy felt a little odd, like, cause I don't know. Like, not to like be a little callous, but like I'm gonna be honest. Like when I went to college, I did not think about my old toys. I didn't give a shit. Like it's just toys. Like I don't know.
I mean,
But
you
like
do
I get
grow
it
out of them
on a
like
meta
even
level.
before 17. I think just
Yeah, well
in the
before, but
Yeah.
in the context of
that's
the
still like pretty
movie, I
bad.
think it
Yeah.
works just fine.
Yeah, it works because there's like a meta layer to it where like we've grown to love these characters as characters, but like I feel like part of me kind of wishes that this movie was. I said it before, but I still think they could still do this for like a future film. But like I would have liked to actually seen how the toys dealt with Andy growing out of them. I feel like that would have not to like criticize the movie because it's not what I wish it was, but like I don't know, like it feels like this movie wants to be about the toys realizing that Andy, dealing with Andy growing out of them, but it takes place 10 years after Andy would have grown out of them. Well, not 10 years, but like a solid like 5-6 years after Andy would have grown out of them because he's like and this is more of just like the last grasp, which makes sense on terms of like as a way to give it a sort of sense of finality, but like I don't know, I'm a little bit iffy on it. But that's just sort of like my general criticisms. In a more broader sense, it being a prison breakout movie is kind of fun, although I don't really, and that is a bit more interesting in terms of a shakeup from 1 and 2, because well actually is it because like 2 is a rescue mission and 1 is essentially a prison breakout thing at the same time, and this sort of just combines the two. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like the Sunnyside Daycare, like this movie spends a lot of time to Sunnyside Daycare. This is like, yeah, I guess that's like a criticism. Like I feel like when I look at 1 and 2, those feel like kind of like epic journeys. They're in like a bunch of variety of locations. When here it's like technically Woody's in like another house, and like we see
Yeah,
the incinerator,
that's
but
It
fair.
those
One
all,
don't.
and two do have more variety in terms of locations.
It
especially
doesn't feel like
two.
very.
Two definitely has the
Mhm.
better sense of scope with location variety.
And also, because like the Sunnyside Daycare, I don't think is like that interesting of a setting. It just feels like really, I don't know, dour and whatnot, and like and again, the incinerator is also kind of dour. So like, it feels like there isn't like enough of like a differentiation in terms of like visual variety and like tone. So I don't know. Again, like I know I'm harping on this movie, but like I don't think it's a bad film. It's just like it falls short in my opinion, and it feels a little bit redundant. So I don't know. But overall, like it's still our characters that we all like. It's still in terms of actual like plotting and scripting, it's pretty like rack solid tight. Like that's kind of the weird thing. It was more of like my issues with the movie is that I just don't find like its goals that compelling rather than like how it's actually executed. Because I think in terms of execution, it's excellent. It's just that like well, I mean, I guess barring the visual like variety, like that I think they could have executed that a little bit more interesting. But like I don't know, it's more of like people told me this was their favorite one. I wouldn't be like that surprised. It didn't really connect with me that much.
I see what you mean. I'm in a similar boat. Like, I'll be honest, as many times as I've seen this movie, it's never made me cry personally. And I do like 1 and 2 more. If 1 and 2 are like tens, this is like a 9 or an 8.5, something like that. I do think this movie does have, if you're looking at it as a trilogy, it is a very solid conclusion. Like, sure, like Sunnyside and like the incinerator and everything, like maybe it's a bit too dour, but I do like the escape route they take. I do think the stakes are pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's what I mean by like it's very well constructed. It's just not like
Yeah.
my thing.
I will say though, there is one thing in this movie that even as a kid always bothered me. I do like the whole sequence when they're in the garbage dump at the end, but I feel like getting there felt a bit forced because what they have to
Yeah,
do is the baby throws Lotso in the garbage. The toys cross the garbage. One of the aliens somehow gets stuck underneath the opening. And to get the alien loose, when they do that, Lotso pulls Woody in, and that sets the. None of that ever made sense to me.
Not to mention, like when they're on
um,
that conveyor belt, they send Lotso to like hit the stop button, and like, why the fuck would you trust Lotso when he's already like proven himself as like this irredeemable asshole?
yeah. I actually kind of like the fact what they do with Lotso in the ending, just because it's a little bit metatextual, but like I feel like the only reason you would ever think that Lotso could be redeemed is the fact that characters like him get redeemed in other movies all the time. You know, like Darth Vader or whatever. But even that one, you know, there's much more setup for that. But I do like the fact that he doesn't like redeem himself because like that's just one, that's a funny bit, but like two, that's just I think that's a good like character piece thing. Actually, there is one compliment I want to shout out to this movie. Barbie and Ken, great additions to the cast.
Ken,
Fucking love them
honestly,
in this
I
movie.
love Ken in this. He's so funny.
Barbie and Ken are so good in this movie. I will say some of the other villains in Lotso's crew, they don't stand out. You know, not even like in terms of visual sense. Again, to compare to the first Toy Story movie, all of Sid's creatures, I feel like they had like a distinct personality between them. Like I could tell just via the way they moved, via the way they act, and they never even spoke. When here, outside the baby and Ken, I don't know shit about the rest of them.
There's a mantis man. That's all I remember.
Yeah, I like.
Well, the monkey. I think the monkey like kind of like
You
strikes
know what?
me.
That's fair. The monkey was pretty good. The monkey was like generally like creepy as fuck to me as a kid.
Yeah, same here.
I like. I don't know. You have any thoughts, Patty? I feel like
On which aspect?
I don't know, just in general.
In general, I told you I do think the movie's great, but I do like 1 and 2 just a bit more.
Yeah, I think that's the consensus here, which is interesting because I know like for a good chunk of my life, everyone thought 3 was the best one. I guess
If you told me it was the best one, like I can see that. Like I'd
I've
understand
never heard
completely.
anyone say
It's
3 is
just,
the best one.
for me personally.
I remember hearing for a while. Okay, this is a random thing. Have you guys ever seen the TV show China, Illinois?
No.
No.
It was an Adult Swim show. Very funny. There's an episode of China, Illinois, where one of the characters thinks Toy Story 3 is overrated, and he gets a ton of shit for it. It's really funny. But yeah, I remember for like a good while, like when I was like in like middle school and high school and stuff, and I was like, I think it's overrated. People like be angry at me that I thought it was overrated. I was like, what the fuck? When we get to my thoughts on Toy Story 4, that's also probably gonna be a hot take because I kind of like it a little bit more. But we'll get into that later. Before we jump into 4, I want to ask you guys, what do you guys think of the Toy Story 2 and 3 video games?
Well, I haven't played them. I've never played any of the
I
Toy
haven't
Story
either.
games. I know that
Damn it.
2 and 3 are really good. In fact, I think they're also remastering 3 for modern platforms.
Yeah, so I played both of them. I have Toy Story 2 Buzz Lightyear to the I bought that
rescue.
on like the PlayStation digital store. Yeah, Toy Story 2 Buzz Lightyear to the rescue. Pretty fun game. Pretty fun collectathon. If you're into classic PlayStation, Nintendo 64 type platformers, I'd recommend it. It's a PlayStation game, but it honestly has a bit more of like a Nintendo sort of vibe to it, just like in the way they design the collectathon things. Really fun. 3, bit more linear. A little less fun, but it's still pretty good. The Xbox one is pretty interesting. I played that one and the DS version. They had the sandbox mode that very obviously later became the inspiration for Disney Infinity, which is kind of funny.
But you didn't have to worry about the toys to life aspect in the toy box mode.
Yeah. Toy box mode was actually really fun. I recommend that. But yeah, the main game is pretty good. No, this isn't something we've talked about, but every Toy Story movie opens with Andy playing with the toys, and in a sense, we're like, so the first game you got whatchamacallit, Andy, you know, playing with the toys and whatnot, and we just see it from like, you know, the real life perspective, where it's like how a kid actually plays with toys. But we actually see it like how Andy imagines it, which is kind of interesting. That's a very fun level in the game. But yeah. And 2, it's more of like you know, where we're seeing a cutscene in like a PlayStation 1 game.
And then
Which
Rex
is,
fails the
interesting.
QTE.
You can't press the fire button and jump at the same time.
Which I don't think is actually true. In the actual game, I'm pretty sure you can, but just besides the point.
Well, he can't because he's got
He
very
can't-
short
Rex can't.
arms.
He's got the T-Rex arms.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. I would highly recommend the video games. They are pretty fun. The Toy Story 1 game on Sega Genesis isn't very good though. Don't play that one. Or Game Boy. Toy Story 1 games aren't good. 2 onward, pretty good. I don't know if 4 has a game. Does 4 have a game?
I don't think it does.
I don't think so. No.
I don't think movie licensed tie-in games are really a thing anymore. At least
Yeah,
not
they have like they have mobile apps where they're like
for a Fortnite collab.
Bro,
yeah.
don't jinx that. Don't will it into existence.
Actually, that is very likely probably going to happen with Toy Story 5. Toy Story 5 Fortnite. I'm googling that now just to see if there's been rumors.
Play now
It
to
is.
get...
It's happening.
Wait, what? No! No!
Yeah, Pixar's coming to. You can already see it. It's Buzz Lightyear, Zurg, Hell yeah, dude.
I was hoping for Forky. God damn it. All right,
It's
whatever.
coming out in like
Fortnite.
it's coming out in like 2 weeks. Yeah, it's coming out in like this month. The Fortnite Toy Story collab because the movie's coming out this month. Man, we probably should have timed that actually because we're whatever. I'm probably not gonna watch 5. I'm gonna be honest, but anyway, Toy
So-
Story 4.
Also known as
Well-
Four Story or Toy Story Fork.
So Toy Story 4 is a 2019 American animated film. Yeah, it was directed by Josh Cooley. He's best known for directing Toy Story 4 and as we previously talked about on the show, Transformers 1. He also wrote the screenplay for Inside Out, of which he was nominated for an Oscar. And this screenplay was Andrew Stanton returned to write the screenplay for this. So it was really funny is Toy Story 4 obviously oddly has more of a connecting tissue with the first 2 Toy Story movies because Andrew Stanton wrote the first 2 movies and this one. But he did not write 3. So that's something to think about. But anyway, talks for the 4th Toy Story began in 2010. So what's funny is a lot of people thought that 3 was, I guess, always intended to be the last one. That is not true. They were planning on making a Toy Story 4 immediately after Toy Story 3 came out. They were planning on doing a 4th one, and the film was officially announced in 2014 during an investors call. Even in like 2011, during an interview, Hank said, "I think they're working on a 4th one." So honestly, the fact that people are widely shocked that they made a 4th one is interesting. This segment is going to be a Toy Story 4 Defense Squad. I don't think the movie's great. I think it's better than people give it credit for. So yeah, anyway, then studio head Pixar John Lasseter directed the first 2 films and executive producer third, was scheduled to direct after writing a film tree with Andrew Stanton, with input from Pete Docter and Lee Ulrich. Rashida Jones also apparently at one point was writing on it, so that's weird. Lasseter explained that Pixar decided to produce the sequel because of their pure passion for the series, and that the film would be a love story. So yeah, that was sort of the pitch for the thing. They wanted this one to much more focus on like the romance between Woody and Bo Peep. In 2016, Cooley replaced Lasseter as director of the film and reconceived the story as well as the purpose of Bo's return to the series. Tim Allen said the film story was so emotional that he couldn't even get through the last scene, and Hank calls the film's ending scene a moment in history. Basically, just what I'm getting from the gist of like reading through this behind the scenes thing is that this movie got made because a lot of people just wanted to make it.
It was more out of passion and not so much a profit.
Yeah, this is like a weird movie that like honestly like they only made it just because like they all wanted to just make another one. It was kind of weird.
I wonder if that's the same case for 5.
5 seems a little bit more cynical, but maybe at the same time, like I'm only thinking that because it's about how the iPad is evil. But at the same time, that feels like something like all these guys are like in their like fucking 50s or something now, right? Like they're old as shit. They're probably like they probably would unironically want to make an iPad bad thing. Is
Toy
that
Story
not
5
like
pitch meeting, iPad bad.
Don Rickles was intended to reprise his role as Mr. Potato Head, but unfortunately passed away in 2017 before any lines were recorded. The Rickles family contacted Pixar because searched for ways for including in the film. So they reviewed 25 years of archived material that Rickles have participated in, including unused lines from the first 3 films, video games, and other spin-off material. Tony Hale was cast as Forky, the homemade toy suffering an existential crisis. And yeah, they also got Key and Peele, which was really funny because this obviously was recorded before Jordan Peele became a famous director, but it came out after he became a director. In a way, this was sort of Key and Peele's last hurrah. Production-wise, this seems to have had a much smoother production. There was a few like non-starters, but compared to 2, which was a fucking mess, yeah, relatively smooth production. It's kind of funny how 1 and 2 are our favorite movies, and those are the ones that by far had the most difficult production. When 3 and 4 were pretty smooth, and those are, you know, kind of considered the weaker ones, but yeah, oh well. So the movie opens with a flashback to 9 years prior to the events of the film. In between the Toy Story 2 and 3, we're seeing sort of the moment where Bo Peep gets donated, and Bo is ready to move on, but Woody is still apprehensive. I guess in fitting with his characterization in Toy Story 3. So anyway, in present day, Woody is struggling to adapt to not being Bonnie's favorite toy. Jessie is Bonnie's favorite toy because, you know, she's a girl. But anyway, Woody sneaks into her backpack for moral support on her first day of kindergarten and helps create Forky, who immediately suffers an existential crisis, seeing himself as trash and not a toy. So Woody eventually sort of becomes Forky's sort of caretaker, trying to stop Forky from throwing himself away.
Bonnie's family goes on a road trip, and Forky jumps out the window, and Woody jumps out after him. They pass an antique store, and Woody recognizes Bo Peep, Bo Peep's lamp, and decides to take a detour to find her. So yeah, and then they encounter a talking doll called Gabby Gabby and her ventriloquist dummy friends who try to take Woody's voice box to replace Gabby's broken one. Yeah, Woody reunites with Bo Peep and her sheep, who become lost toys, and Buzz travels to find Woody. So that's basically sort of the gist of it. We have some new toys, and it's somewhat of a retread of the other movies, but I feel like there's a bit more of a unique flavor to it, which made it, I don't know, stand out to me compared to 3. But yeah, ultimately the movie ends with Woody decides he's ready to move on. We also have a villain with Gabby, who I guess it's sort of the in between the prospector and Lotso, and her arc is interesting as she sort of wants to be taken by the store owner's granddaughter Harmony, but she doesn't give a shit. But later she gets adopted by someone else. Admittedly, one of the more flawed parts of the film. But yeah, you guys want to get into it?
Actually, I want Lugia to start since he, unlike you and me, Red, he hasn't seen it before.
This was my first time seeing Toy Story 4. Now, I was one of those people, like, even though I haven't seen Toy Story 3 as much, I was one of those people that thought Toy Story 3 ended perfectly fine the way it did, and there wasn't really much of a reason to continue an overarching narrative past that. We are already done with Andy's saga with his toys. He gives them away to Bonnie, and then he moves on. What could you really do from there? And I think Toy Story 4 managed to surprise me at that answer. Granted, it is not perfect, but I think Toy Story 4 studies Woody as someone who's not being used anymore and still longing for a purpose. Like, he still helps out Bonnie with kindergarten, but then he finds new purpose with Bo Peep and becoming a lost toy and just realizing that his time as a kid's toy is up. He's not being used anymore. He needs to let go. I think for Woody, this is like a really nice epilogue.
Yeah. So that's sort of my argument for the film too, is that like I feel like so my criticism with 3 sort of was that I kind of felt that it felt a little redundant in terms of like the character thing with 2 and 3, just because I felt like 2 was like Woody had anxiety that this would happen, then 3 shows it coming to pass. But 4 I thought was a bit more interesting because Woody's dilemma there is much more. It feels more like the first one, except that like it doesn't work out for him in the end, which I think is interesting. Where like it's sort of like Woody gets displaced as the favorite toy, and this time, unlike 1 where it's more of like a temporary thing, he actually has to contend with that, and I think that's interesting. He was never Bonnie's favorite, really, so I think that's kind of interesting. And what's funny also is that Bonnie like still likes Woody. Like it's very clear that she hasn't like gotten rid of it. But the fact that Woody's character in the end is ultimately he stops being like so child focused and starts to sort of self actualize. I think that's interesting. So Woody's arc of the story, I think, is pretty compelling. Some of my criticisms, though, is a bit with the villain, because as much as I had issues with Lotso, I feel like he was a perfect foil for Woody, because ultimately he showed what Woody would become if he didn't learn to let go. With what's her name?
Gabby.
With Gabby, she's like, oh, I need the validation of a kid. And then she doesn't get it after she finally gets everything she wants. And I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting, because that's kind of similar to, like, Woody, where like Woody has to learn to like let go of the validation. But then a kid does find her, and then I'm like, oh, like from a thematic level, I don't get how that's a satisfying conclusion. And I think it feels almost like a studio note, almost where like studio's like, oh, actually that is true. I think like people are sad that like she didn't have like a happy ending or whatever. So they gave it to her, but I feel like that completely like undercut sort of the thematic contention of the movie. So yeah. My one artistic note is that do not include the happy ending for Gabby. I mean, not happy ending, but like she can have a happy ending, but I think her happy ending needs to be more about self-actualization. Maybe her joining Woody and Bo Peep rather than her getting an actual owner. I feel like that would have been a better thing.
But before that happened, the goal was to get her to Bonnie.
I know, but given Woody's journey, I feel like as a foil, it would have been much more compelling if when she got rejected, she I don't know, self-actualize a bit, similar to Woody, and I feel like that would have made more sense. But I don't know. Instead, it's more of like I almost feel like her arc almost goes like the opposite direction of Woody, and I feel like that's kind of like a strange choice in terms of like a trying to create like a full thematic picture. That being said, though, I still think Woody's arc is pretty good. Another criticism, I feel like Buzz Lightyear's a little flanderized in this movie. It's a funny bit, but I feel like he wasn't an idiot
Buzz does
in the
not
other
feel
movie.
like Buzz at all in this film.
It feels
Yeah,
like a way to just conveniently get him into the plot.
yeah, but he doesn't feel like him anymore. So it's kind of like who cares if he's in the plot if he's not Buzz Lightyear? So I don't know.
Speaking of, this film, out of all the other ones, has the most useless cast. Woody's important, and all the new toys are definitely important, but like everyone else from the previous films, like Potato Head, Jesse, Rex, all of them, they don't really get to do much in this one. Even Bonnie's toys don't really do anything.
Yeah, that's another issue.
Yeah.
Here's the thing though, is that since this movie is a lot more personal to Woody, I feel like that's fine.
It's a
That
necessary
doesn't bother me
evil.
as much. Yeah. So I mentioned my criticisms. Here's my positives. One, all the new toys, hilarious. I fucking love the new cast. They're amazing.
I was surprised how much I really liked Forky. I thought he was going to be annoying from beginning to end. No, I actually came around on him really quick.
He's hilarious. Key and Peele are hilarious, and the fucking Duke Kaboom. I fucking love the new cast members. They're amazing. I honestly, in terms of pure comedy, I think this is one of the funniest ones since the original. And I find Woody's sort of journey to be much more thematically interesting. It's just I feel the villain I think Buzz are like just sort of the two sort of weak links with the film, in my opinion. And I don't think like the villain is necessarily bad. I think she has an interesting setup. I just don't like her conclusion. She reminds me of the Prospector because, like the Prospector, she never became a toy. She never got to play with the kid, and she reminds me of like Lotso because of like the bitterness and whatnot. But
Well, she's not even like
I don't know.
evil or nefarious. She just wants the
But
voice
that's the thing.
spots.
Yeah, the fact that she's not evil is like actually sort of what's compelling about her. Like she's not really that much of a villain. And I feel like if she realized, again, I just have issues with her ending. I feel like there's not much of an arc with her, and I feel like it could have been a good arc, but I don't know. I'm just a little disappointed by that. That's really my only like real issue with the movie. Everything else I'm fine with, but yeah, very funny. The way it looks is very interesting because in a pure graphic fidelity sense, this is the best looking Pixar movie like ever made. Like to this day, I think it's the best looking Pixar movie. Just in terms of like,
The way the characters move, because like everybody's a different toy, they paid very close attention to how like what the material of everybody is made out of and how they're supposed to move around and interact. I think one of my favorites is Forky, with how he just waddles all over the place because he's literally just a spork with a pair of broken popsicle sticks for feet.
yeah. I talked about how what I loved about the first movie was like the character animation. That's a good point. The character animation here is very good. I was just thinking about how like at one point in this movie they imitate a split diopter shot. So I'm gonna get like a little nerdy about this, but this movie looks like it was shot on actual cameras, and like I looked into behind the scenes because after I saw this movie, and like they actually intentionally were trying to make it so like they intentionally like they did like some weird filters and shit to make it look like it was shot on anamorphic lenses. They had split diopter. Like that's like really interesting to me. That in terms of like a technical showcase, just like if the conceit of these films is to make you feel like these toys have come to life, I feel like this is the movie that succeeds the most of it because these just feel like actual toys that came to life, especially because it feels like it's shot on actual cameras. It's funny watching all these movies in a row because like you had the fucking dog from the first movie and then the cat here, and like that's such like a insane glow up. Um,
You can always
Personally, like,
tell the graphical glow up of the Toy Story movies by how they animate the animals.
I will say I do think that the humans have like realistic skin texture, and that felt a little uncanny to me. I feel like late 2010s Pixar was like that those are the humans I like the most, like Wally, Up, Toy Story 3. I like how the look of the humans there. I feel like after Inside Out, the skin textures got so realistic it started to feel uncanny. I know the flashback with Andy. He looked weird to me. Part of it is because they changed the design, but like I don't know. I feel like he looked a little off. But I don't know. Overall, this movie like looks fantastic. Even like compared to the trailers for 5, I think it looks better than the trailers to 5. I don't know why they decide to step away from the realistic camera look, but I feel like you can see the passion here.
I'm in a similar boat to you guys. I think the stuff with Woody is very compelling. I liked the expansion of the toy world, like how the lost toys work, like how they're happy even though they don't have owners. The antique shop is a great new location. And this might seem incredibly minor, but it bothered me. At the beginning of the movie, we get that flashback to 9 years before when they were still with Andy, and Bo Peep is getting sent away, and she's like, "No, no, you need to let me go." There's a brief second where Woody considers getting in the box with Bo Peep. I just cannot see Woody from Toy Story 2 between Toy Story 3 doing that. Cannot see Woody ever giving up being with Andy for anyone. That thought just kind of sat with me for like the first half of the movie, and I couldn't shake it off.
I'm just gonna chalk
I'm
that
not.
up to
I'm not.
hit that
I mean,
to
it's a
Bo
love
Peep
thing.
being basically his love interest. It was just kind of a spur of the moment thing before reconsidering.
I mean, it's a moment of doubt. I mean, he had a moment of doubt in the second movie too. I mean, if you want to be real. So like, I don't think it was that out of character. It's just that like with the second movie, it was more of like the moment of doubt was more motivated by like he knows Andy is gonna grow out of him soon. But here, the moment of doubt is more motivated by like love for someone else, which I think is actually a stronger reason for him to ditch than two. But I don't know. So I didn't think it was that out. I didn't really think it was out of character. Yeah, because like I get the idea that he's not gonna like ditch Andy just because like Andy's gonna grow out of him. But ditch Andy for a greener pasture, maybe. I don't think that was that unreasonable.
Fair enough, but I don't know. It just something about it just didn't sit right with me.
Still, the fucking. I keep thinking like when Key and Peele was like, "All right, here's our plan," and then he's just them insulting people. It's so funny, man.
All right, I'm gonna be
It's like a big
real.
bit.
I did not really like them all that much.
They were annoying, but I didn't see them being annoying. But like I don't know, that the fact they kept coming to that bit where like their plan is just to beat up people, that cracked me up after like every
The
time they
joke
repeated it, it got
itself
funny.
is fine, but in that one scene, I feel like they could have just left it at the first time they assault the old lady, and then Buzz is like, "No, we're not doing that. Damn it. Okay, moving on." I felt like it just dragged the pace of the joke down when they had to do it like two more times within that same sequence.
But yeah, Duke Kaboom was probably my favorite of the new side characters, though.
Isn't he voiced by Keanu Reeves?
He is. So yeah, overall, I guess surprisingly positive on four, although it has some major flaws. If I were to rank them, I guess I'd go 2, 1, 4, 3, or maybe 3, 4. I guess it depends on
I would go
my
2,
mood, but
1, 3, 4, but I don't think any of these films are bad in the slightest. Even if I think 4 is the weakest, it still has a lot of positives that make me like ultimately come around on it.
Yeah, I'm in the
Yeah.
same tier as Lugia. 2, 1, 3, 4.
So overall, check out all the movies if you haven't seen Toy Story 4, because I know a lot of people, they only seen the trilogy and they're like, 4 seems unnecessary. I think we'd all say it's worth a watch.
Yeah,
So,
definitely give 4 a shot. You'll get something out of it.
maybe if we see 5, we'll talk about that. But
Since the series is
Who knows?
already fresh in my mind, I think I may as well just go see 5. I'm gonna
Yeah,
have
honestly,
my doubts though. It's gonna be
I
a
was not-
repeat of what I thought 4 was gonna be like. Like, because now 4 had a pretty good ending. It wraps up Woody's arc very nicely. Why the fuck is he coming back?
Yeah, that's the part that throws me off. Also, he's balding and fat, and that's just like a weird.
The balding part I can kind of understand. I do not get him being fat. Just don't
Yeah,
eat.
when I saw
What
the
the
trailer,
fuck?
I was like, huh? Also, like the fact the villain's an iPad, that's just really fucking funny to me. I'm like, listen, okay, so this is something I implied a little bit earlier in the thing, but like, as much as I like Pixar, I feel like their philosophy, they have very conservative themes in a lot of their work. Ultimately, like, people debate it, but like, you could argue that The Incredibles and are kind of and Ratatouille are a little bit Randian. They're a little bit right wing libertarian in ideology. The Toy Story movies are very much about like there's like a there's a right way to play with toys. When I don't know, I feel like that there's a little bit of a conservative thing there. I don't think that's like necessarily an issue, but like it does stick in the back of my head a little bit because like I don't. As much as I like their movies, I don't actually think I agree with a lot of the messages in them. I like how many of them are about sort of like moving on because there is as much as I'm saying it has a somewhat conservative temperament. I do think ultimately the messages that like you do have to move on is very much not that. So I guess it's not like fully conservative, but like I don't know, like Incredibles or Ratatouille. Okay, you know what? This is a complete side tangent. Ratatouille I think is Pixar's best movie. The fucking ending monologue though is such a crack of shit in my opinion. Where Ego is like, perhaps when Gusteau said anyone can cook. He means that not anyone can cook, but you can find a great cook from any place. And I'm like, that is not what Gusteau meant. Gusteau meant he thinks anyone can cook. He made a cookbook for the common man. That is not what he meant. The whole like end of the movie is like the villains almost realize that maybe he was wrong about Gusteau, but his way of realizing that he's wrong about Gusteau is just by pretending Gusteau meant something different. But that's not what he meant. Like that.
So he's still wrong.
Yes, I'm like, that's not. I don't know. I think that's weird, and I feel like Ego's like perspective is actually Brad Bird's perspective because with Incredibles is like if everyone's special, no one is, and he's very much like the sort of contention of like the Incredibles is that like great people are being like held down, which again is a very Ayn Rand type philosophy, which I think is incorrect. That's besides the point. It works in the context of a superhero movie. That's still like Pixar, I think, there are some muddy elements with Pixar's movies thematically, even in 4, as I mentioned before, where I feel like, they kind of want to have their cake and eat it too with some aspects. Like, they're just like so well made, no one minds. Here's like an ironic thing. I think Monsters University, the Monsters Inc. prequel, is actually one of their strongest in terms of actual theming. It's also like, it's Monsters University. Like, that's no one's like favorite Pixar movie. Enough of the random Pixar tangent. Maybe one day we'll talk about those movies some other time, but what's the recommendation for next week?
Right. So, just to preface, we are already 2 hours into this recording. I think this is our longest one, even after Godfather. But
And we're talking about 4 movies, so
well, yeah. Thank God we're not talking about 5. So, I'll keep it simple. We're gonna talk about a director that we haven't done before, and I don't know if you know him at all. His name is Abel Ferrara.
I love Abel Ferrara.
Okay, so this is gonna be interesting.
Yeah,
because I have
King
never.
of New York and Bad Lieutenant.
So I've never seen any of his films before, but I've been seeing clips of topic for next week, King of New York. You already said it, but I've been seeing clips of it recently, and I've been very curious to watch it. So I'm gonna use this next week's episode as an excuse to.
Yeah, I've been meaning to rewatch that actually, so that's good. His movie Miss 45 is pretty popular in Japan. It inspired a lot of characters. Have you seen Black Lagoon?
No.
Okay, never mind. Well,
I know of it. I know of it though. I haven't seen it.
You know, there's a nun that packs heat in that show. There's like a nun with like a Uzi. That's inspired by Abel Ferrara, and yeah.
Okay.
Abel Ferrara is still around. He played the gangster in Marty Supreme, which was my favorite movie of last year. So good for him. But yeah, cool. King of New York. Do you guys? I don't really have an ending for this. Yeah, so long, partner. To infinity and beyond. There's a snake in my pants.